7 p.m. on Tuesday, September 18th, 2018. This is a meeting of the Advisory Committee in the Selectmen's meeting room at the Town Hall. The first item on our agenda is to review and vote on a transfer request, and for those who don't have the paper before them, the amount requested is $3,393 and is to be transferred from the Advisory Reserve Fund into account 945-5747, which is the town's employment-related practice insurances. And the reason is because the insurance premiums came in higher than had been anticipated and budgeted.
I just was wondering, Ted had sent an email asking some questions on this. Did you get any of the answers to those questions?
No, I didn't. They may be in my inbox, but I didn't. And the more I think about it, they may be questions for another time. I mean, today is just the motion on the floor is to transfer the funds.
I would expect those questions would come in handy as we look at the budgeting for this.
I think maybe downstream we'll look at insurance in more detail. And
one thing though that I just...
A lot of detail.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
He just in a lot of detail. He wants to be clear.
Yeah. One thing that I wanted to explain to everybody, because I had an opportunity to speak with Linda yesterday, is that if you go to the expenditure ledger page that she attached to the transfer, you'll see that the total amount left, so the original total budgeted amount was over $75,000. The total amount left is only $387 because we basically paid all the premiums that we were expecting. And the way that they typically do it is they pay as the premiums come in. And so although the premium, the invoice that was attached is for public officials' liability, and it's lower than the amount that we had allocated, the reason is because the policies that came in more expensive than anticipated were the police professional liability, the police fire and accident, and the motor vehicle. But because they pay them as they come in,
It took them.
the first to the trough.
exactly.
Yeah.
And so we're really making up the difference for those negative numbers. But I hope that's clear to everybody.
Did you do any analysis of which of the premiums is more? I mean, is it any one policy that is like humongous more and then why? Or is it?
Yeah,
each
so
one is just
primarily, like the one that is the most, to use a technical term, out of whack, was the police professional liability. And it's actually because I guess they don't request updated roster numbers every year, but we now have, we have a higher number of reserve officers, so I think our total roster is up to 18. And so on paper, it looked like we went from insuring 12 employees to 18. So that was the explanation for that one. For the police fire and accident, that was just a premium that came in slightly higher than we were expecting as a percentage of the overall premium. It wasn't a huge amount. And then for the motor vehicle, it's again because they requested an updated listing of all motor vehicles, so we actually look on paper like we had more than the last time it was renewed. So, yeah.
Well, then I'll move the...
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Okay, great. All right, the next item on the agenda is liaison updates. If any of the liaisons have had any, communications that they'd like to share. I have some, but I'll let others go first.
Well, Ted, I don't know about you, Ted, but I haven't talked to Joe, and we should set up some time with him. He was on holiday until last couple weeks ago. So.
I've talked to Leslie, and the bottom line is it's on their agenda, and they were to have talked about it, I think, last week.
Okay, so we'll set up something soon then.
I'm sorry?
So we can probably set up something relatively soon.
Yeah, and
I know they're doing a lot of stuff.
I just asked them, would be a convenient way for us to regularly stay abreast of DPW activities.
Yeah.
And I threw out a kind of our suggestion, but I haven't heard back.
Yeah, and I'm not sure, I mean, we need to go every month. I think it's get something set up and then decide.
See what
it
they
is. Yeah,
come up
see what
with.
they would be helpful to
This
them.
is a question I had, maybe I missed it, that meeting when you guys set up the liaison. How did you decide on who's gonna contact? Did you, because I know when you sent the email, it was, I need to talk to the co-liaison before I just call, because then they would be bombarded, well,
Yeah,
not
yeah, you're
bombarded
right.
with
Well-
calls, but, so,
So you and I have the police, or public safety.
right.
And so whenever you feel your way into setting something up, I'm happy to call them and say we'd like to set a point and just give it some idea of when it would be convenient and then work with you.
Well, I sure
But
would
you're
like
gonna
to
be
do it.
busy.
I know that, are we pushing to have their budgets by,
I think we want to try to duplicate last year where we were able to do an initial run through everything by early December.
so maybe we should get in time.
And I wanted to introduce myself anyway, because I don't really know the chief. I mean, I've run into him over the years, but I don't
Yeah.
think he knows me from Adam, so I wanted just to do a courtesy call anyway.
Okay.
Well, on a related note, we're gonna talk next about this document, but once we've finalized it, I'm gonna ask Dawn and Linda to send it out, and then that'll put on everybody's radar, like, oh, they won't be surprised if they hear from the liaisons.
And related to the DPW, we had talked about maybe you contacting, I forget what the name of it is, Safe Highways, or, there's two related
Oh, yeah.
committees.
Yeah, well, actually, I sent an email to Joe,
Oh.
and I suggested that he might want to have a conversation with a couple of folks who've been engaged in that, just to give himself some background. And I know that he placed a call.
Town roads and strategic planning and public ways and safety.
Right.
And-
One was Mary Chuno, because she's public way safety, isn't she?
Right.
And then,
So you've been in contact?
so I had sent Joe an email and said, here's a couple of folks you might want, when you have a moment, you might want to introduce yourself to and get a better understanding of what they've had going on, rather than him sort of jumping in and, you know, finding out some of the work has been done, some of the priorities have been set. And he needs to know that, whether he agrees with them or not, because he may choose to change it, but he needs to know who those players are and recognize the work they've done.
You know, and I have a suggestion as well, because some of these are different from last year. And when we did meet with the library, there were some bits and pieces of information. Of course, Donna Madden was here at the time, and I'm sure Nanashka could help whoever, let's see, who is it? Library, Craig and Joe. I would talk to Nanashka, and of course, Joe was on last year, so he may remember, but we may have had some discovery that might carry over to this year and help whoever the liaison is new to that
Mhm.
particular department. You know, I don't know, but that might also help.
And you know, and part of, you know Kelly, and part of it is just knowing the department head and coming in and introducing your role, and then, you know, we would
Well, there's a little
attach
more
you.
than that.
Well,
with
I
the
know, you need to
library.
get background, and I would tend to, I think it's important to respect the department heads and be in touch with them first, and then get background before you actually sit down and introduce, I am the liaison, we're here to support, coordinate.
Yeah, because they had promised to change some things if it wasn't close to the numbers that we had asked them to be close to, and they were close, but
Well, they
think
also
they
forked
could
over
do-
$5,000
They came
when I
back.
asked
They
them
came
that,
back.
so
They-
yeah.
there were only one or two departments who
Yeah.
were able to find some funds to go back in. But I think it should, you know what it's to set up and sort of introduce the role. And then we can plumb the background.
Which board is this?
Advisory.
I
Thank
think
you.
you're across the way, yeah.
I can speak to ambulance and fire.
Okay.
Craig and I are the liaisons there. And we reached out to determine if there's already any kind of a regular meeting between a Board of Selectmen person and ambulance and fire, so we can just piggyback on that.
Yep.
And we find out that, I guess Don Load has regular meetings, but that probably is not not an option for us. And the response we got from one of the selectmen was to kind of wait till the next permanent fire chief is in place. I have no idea of that timeline, and I think for the present, we'll follow that advice. If some issues come up, we will be liaisoning.
I don't know the current schedule, but I assume
I thought it was on.
it's probably a month or two at least before we've got a new fire chief.
I have no idea.
The other question, I think it's for you, is Don understand that we're setting up liaisons? Because he needs to know as well.
Yeah, so that's what this whole document
Okay.
is for, because basically, once we finalize this, I'll send it to Dawn and Linda, and then they, like 2 years ago, when Brad did this, I think actually Dawn and Linda were the ones who sent it out to the department heads.
Okay.
And so Dawn knows about the liaison program in general and knows that we were reassigning.
Okay, good, because we don't want to blindside him either.
Yeah. So did anyone else have anything that they wanted to share before we get to this? Because I wanted to give you a little Parks and Rec update.
That's what I was.
So, well, because this hasn't been formalized yet,
Yes.
right? Laura Roberts contacted me because I had been one of the liaisons, and so we met briefly last week, and she wanted to flag a couple things for us. So I think you remember last year Parks and Rec had considered making a request for sort of an administrative assistant type of a position, and they brought some initial materials, and then ultimately after talking with Dawn and Donna Madden, they didn't make their request formally. So Laura said that they are most likely going to renew that request, and she shared with me a bit of the rationale and thinking, but also said we'd really like to do as much homework as we can to answer the types of questions advisory would want us to answer. So the ask is for everyone here to think about what types of information and data are you going to want from Parks and Rec, or quite honestly, any department that's proposing a labor increase. That's just a flag. I think probably they're going to request a meeting with us later in the fall, maybe November, to just flesh out their ideas a bit more. But one thing that Laura mentioned is that they've got, the elected Parks and Rec commissioners, in an ideal world, their skill set would be used to apply for grants and maybe do some fundraising or maybe request donations. Like I know that they were able to get several $1,000s for the concert on the Common this year. But they find themselves really bogged down with a lot of just basic administrative tasks, like making sure there are sufficient porta potties for whatever event. And so they want to be creative and just think about, like, is there a way for us to get this function carried out by someone other than us? So that's kind of the general idea. So does anyone have any initial reactions or want some time to think about it?
Very cartoony.
Yeah.
My initial reaction is they need to define what activities are being done now, and then what activities will be done with this additional person.
The merit.
Then we measure the delta activities versus the cost of this person. And it'd be wonderful if there was a return on investment. I doubt that. That would be our first look at. Secondly, is this, and you can't mush it all together. I mean, it has to be honestly, here's what we're able to do now, and what are we going to be able to do in the future, and those increased functions or activities, that's what we're paying for with this extra person. And it'd be very interesting to see what that is.
I think the other thing is to get a good picture of the breadth of what they are doing, because they started out small and now it's a much more robust program. And when we talked with them, they were talking a lot about just some of the administrative work, scheduling the fields, coordinating whatever. And so that was initially the thinking, do you remember that? And so it's gotten to the point where the program is active, in demand, and growing and broad, and then you have a group of volunteers trying to schedule everything. And so the question is, what's also the benefits of when you get someone to manage that administrative end? I would assume that it would be more responsive, a better scheduling process, and I mean, you could just think of how it could be improved with one person sitting there, and that's part of their job, a significant part of their job. Plus, tracking fees in.
Right.
And why can't volunteers do this, whatever needs to be done?
Well, from what I
We
understand.
have 5 volunteers here, and,
Right, but Ted, I think it's a constant thing with all the sports groups.
I don't know.
Well, you and I had the meeting with them, that they're getting to the point where they can't keep up with the volume.
Yeah, I think, but I think what we really want to do is give them the opportunity to come in
Right.
and make
The case.
a presentation that is responsive to the various concerns that we would have, because I think all of us probably have slightly different emphases. So when it gets closer to the time of the meeting, I'll probably ping everyone for, kind of like we did when the marijuana bylaw came in, like, are there certain things you want them to make sure they're ready to address?
So we should have done with the fire,
Yeah.
truck thing, can't think of that little thing. Yeah. That was gonna happen.
So that was Parks and Rec. Oh, and the other thing is,
Oh, the other thing we should get from them, or at some point get the data of how much, how many programs now they engage in, how many, the scheduling of the, how many fields, what percentage of time they're scheduled, because that's it. I think the big thing with them is they have been wildly successful and they can't keep up.
Yeah, now they have common
Yeah,
to,
that's right, I forgot about that.
and then Laura also mentioned that they have their Halloween parade every year, and she wanted to see whether anyone on advisory would be interested in judging the costume portion of the program. So just put that, I'll send you an email, but I think it's Saturday, October 27th, in case you want to see kids in cute outfits.
I might need a dose of that now I've gone through all my son's baby pictures.
Yeah. Okay.
Is there one judge, or like?
It's a
Olympics?
bunch of people. Yeah.
I'm not interested.
You don't want to make
You
the
have to
children
dress
cry.
up.
You'd be
You
good.
would
You'd
have
be
to dress
good.
up.
All right, so the next item on the agenda was to discuss and finalize the liaison assignments, and then review and discuss the document that summarizes roles and responsibilities. So let's start first with the assignments. This is what we had outlined at that meeting back in August. You weren't able to make it, but if there are any changes that anybody would like to suggest.
And Connie, your name was nominated for these, but it was in the minutes, or will be, that if you're not comfortable, you can opt out
Or,
of any of these. Where you're
oh no, I'm only on a couple.
Okay.
So I have.
But
Well,
we
you
sort
weren't
of
here
stuck
to-
you on
You
there.
weren't here to
so-
express a yay or nay, so.
So if you're
Unless
okay.
there's someone, oh, I'm fine,
Okay.
unless someone else is uncomfortable with their role.
We thought you'd give the courtesy
Jump
of
in.
Okay.
saying no.
All right, good, then we'll leave those as they are. And then, in terms of the actual document itself, Ann just showed me a little edit to take out the word proactively on the first bullet, but did anyone else have either questions or edits or thoughts about the document as a whole?
One thought. Fourth bullet down, report back to the full advisory committee and flag important issues as they arise. I think that's great. But do we run counter to practice when we start talking about another department and they're not here? if we're totally in sync with that department and cheerleading them, it's probably not an issue. But if that other department is, if the issue has got two sides to it, then ever how objective we try to be when we share it with each other, somebody may object to us discussing it with the department not here. And maybe we just leave this as is, be sensitive to that, and work each
Yeah.
case
Yeah.
on its own.
I think that's the way to handle it. We just say we met, they have these 3 issues, and we probably need to follow up with them, and then we can.
I mean, we can invite them
Yeah.
here, we can share with them talking
Right.
points before we talk, but,
Yeah.
you know, we've all kind of,
We don't want to have the discussion
We don't want
without the department
because you
engaged.
can have one issue and then it kind of
Goes out
segues
of
over and you're
control,
talking
yeah.
about something else, and they're not here and it's not fair to them, or
Um,
it, whatever it is.
We could rewrite that a little bit and just say, rather than report back, just keep the full advisory apprised of important issues as they arise.
I don't mind the report back.
Yeah,
Kinda
report
like
back,
that.
as long as we understand that we are not going into discussions
I,
without some representative from
Yeah.
that department here.
I just think of like a report card, they're doing a D job.
I mean, I think personally what I'll do is if I'm reporting back on a subject that has two sides to it,
Yeah.
probably mine and the department's, I will say, you need to be at this meeting.
Yeah.
That's good.
And then it'll probably get into a bigger
Synopsis of what
discussion than we
you're
want,
doing.
but nevertheless.
I think what we want to do, I mean, what's sort of the objective here is to become familiar with the operation so that we can more intelligently analyze the budget and understand what the priorities are.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's not to find, things that are wrong
No,
and make their
no.
lives miserable.
Yeah.
I also thought Brad had established, I thought, a really helpful practice of certainly not voting on anything without a representative present.
Right,
Or at
right.
least, like, there were times when maybe you would vote on something that you had established ahead of time was like de minimis and they wouldn't care, but you wouldn't vote on something major unless they were here.
And they should know when you are going to vote on anything that affects their department.
Yeah,
Well, we wouldn't.
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
fair.
Yeah, I do too. Agreed.
But that's a great point, Ted. Anybody else? This is not actually spelled out in the document, but I would just say that if anybody is in a position to feel like they want to ask for some real meaty information, something that a department head could perceive as burdensome, I'd want to make sure that you kept me in the loop and Don Lowe, because I just think it's important for him to know.
I think it's a very good point, that, when we meet with them regularly, however that turns out, that's more really of a listening mode, maybe understanding, but not, we're not part of the line organization. We cannot ask for things really, unless it maybe already exists.
Well, and we can always just make the suggestion that it would be conducive for them to include it in whatever they present to the entire board,
Yeah.
and we
But
make a
keeping Don-
suggestion to
keeping
different
Don in the
things,
loop,
not that we
yeah.
have to
Yes,
ask
yes.
for.
I see this as a way for us to better serve the town and understand the departments, not to influence how the departments run.
Right.
So it makes our job easier if we understand what they're doing, what their challenges are, what their plans are going forward, where they see they're going to need support, where they see they're concerned about something. It's really understanding where they're coming from so that when we actually look at the budget, it's been infused with some background on what the challenges are. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I also don't think that totally rules out the possibility of, like, for example, if we perceived an opportunity for a change that might be beneficial to the department and the town, we would probably be able to make that suggestion without it being perceived as,
Running the department.
Tell
Running
them
the
what they
department.
want to do.
I mean, it's a collaborative approach.
yeah.
And I think that's how we have to make sure that it's perceived.
I agree.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know that we need to necessarily vote on this, but it sounds like everybody is comfortable with this document. I'll take out the word proactively and,
I would put an initial, your typical header with the initial date, revision number.
oh, yeah,
This thing will change in the decades ahead.
yeah.
And you could even put somewhere at the bottom that you're the owner, or it's pretty obvious.
Yeah, okay.
It's not section of this.
I mean, this is supposed to be helpful, not to torture people.
I remember one year when I was liaison to police, they wanted nothing to do with me not the police.
Okay, next item on the agenda was to review and discuss the current draft set of financial policies and identify any follow-up questions for the town's finance team. So, I only have my electronic version. I didn't want to have a gazillion hard copies, but first of all, just a general point of information. Nanachka has advised me that our auditors would like to see financial policies put in place. And so I think that there's a push, a well-meaning push to try to get these finalized over the next few months. So I'd really like for us to try to finish our review over the next few weeks so then we can pass on like the latest and greatest to the Board of Selectmen in October with the goal of having everything done for November. With the understanding that we should be revisiting these pretty much every year and changing things if we need to, so.
So are these all new to us?
That's
Yeah,
a great
and-
question. So if everyone can flip to the page 4, yeah, the table of contents.
I'm going to share with you.
I would print it out.
We're going to print this on the fritz.
So,
Do we know, is it a hand?
No,
no,
that,
Connie printed,
I printed
Oh, you
mine.
printed
Do you want
mine.
to go run
Mine's
and take
coming up
this?
here
and- Well,
slowly.
you probably can pull yours up.
um,
Andy, you want to take this and go print it out?
Yeah. Well, I can share with,
Okay.
and I can go back and look if it's on one, but I didn't print it out because my print is on the fritz.
Mhm.
oh, no.
49.
These ones
What
are
are
printing.
what are you gonna do? It was much easier for me to do it this way anyway. I wrote all over it.
So if you look at the table of contents, the investments policy has already been in place. We've just added it to this document. That was something that Donna Madden had put in place. The revenue turnover, reconciliations, and disbursements policies had been in place but not in this form. And then the capital planning policy, which is the first one, was formally adopted by us and the Board of Selectmen last February and May. So the rest of the policies are all pretty much new.
Okay.
So the new ones, just quickly,
Debt
debt
management,
management, financial reserves,
forecasting,
forecasting.
OPEB, overlay, and then fraud, risk, and whistleblower.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the other thing to note is that for the most part, the new policies were developed by drawing on resources from the Division of Local Services, and so that's why.
But
Yeah,
we can disagree.
absolutely. Yep. Yep. And so what we tried to do in the draft everybody has is we took kind of some of the templates from the Division of Local Services, tried to update them to reflect the town's practice. And that was based on input from like Don and Nanachka and Kristen. So that's where we stand.
Okay.
So I just have a question, when you print this out, because some of this covered some of the words in the back, I mean, it's all gonna be cleaned up, right?
Yep. Yeah, what'll
What about
happen
the
is
spacing and,
the final version will only be in a PDF format, so then like there won't be formatting inconsistencies based on which version of Word a person happens to
Okay.
have.
So, page 11, I was concerned that I guess I
all
should
the way
read
to
it
11?
a second or third time, fourth time, whatever, regarding withdrawing more than a third. That is, the withdrawal being limited to 1/3 of the general stabilization fund balance. So,
We are jumping ahead to 11?
yeah, well, we can go wherever you want.
Okay.
You
I
want
thought
to
maybe
just
we'd
go page by page? Works for me.
I don't know, because,
Yeah, well, why don't we flag that? We'll follow up on that. But capital planning is, I mean, I don't think we should
No,
propose any changes to that.
that
Yeah.
just fly through it.
So why don't we start, well, Ted sent me some edits to the introduction. I don't know if anybody else.
I wouldn't worry about that. Although
I
maybe
only
our
have
English
one
person
edit,
here.
but on debt limits,
Okay.
you know, we are writing the sentence differently on number 1, just grammatically different.
Which page are you on?
I am on page 9.
Okay.
So under debt limits, B number 1A, we have in a given fiscal year will be no more. And then B says the service will in a given fiscal year be. So I think it should be
yeah.
will be in both sentences.
Yeah.
Remember the whole thing, that's the only one I said, that's
So
pretty good.
it's a grammatical.
Yeah, it's just a grammatical, but now we can get to the meat of the stuff.
That's good, thank you.
That was under B,
Yes.
put a,
B.
Will be.
Will be,
in a given year, in a fiscal.
yes. And I have a question, not that I think the bond rating is the most important thing in the world, but when we were discussing, let's see, on the same page, number 4, at the end of that sentence, it says jeopardizing the debt issuance's tax exempt status. Should we include in bond rating there?
What page were we on?
9, number 4, it goes on to page
C4.
10. We talk-
Yeah, I see what you mean.
You know, we talk so much about bond rating and I qualms about that, but it seems like it's really important to,
Number
I'm not
4,
sure.
where it says,
yeah, and our bond rating. I don't know
Yeah.
if that should be
Jeopardizing
including.
the debt issuance is tax exempt status and the town's bond rating.
Yeah,
I think we could do that.
Okay.
You can read it with people, it's fine.
This is scintillating TV for anybody watching at home.
it's more fun to watch a chia pet.
We could bring one next time.
I never did have one. Oh.
well, if we're on that page, under D, reporting, number 1, it just says the treasurer collector will report, and I have submit a written report, because the report could be oral, could be anything.
Oh, that's true.
And then I feel that this particular report is of interest to advisory as well, so I said to the board of selectmen and advisory committee. There are a lot of places where I didn't add our name, but this is one where I thought.
Yep.
So we'll submit,
Treasurer collector will submit
written-
a written report to the board of selectmen and maybe it should be and to put and advisory committee on the town's debt status at least annually. We probably get it anyway, but this is it.
right?
I like that.
I did.
Next, financial reserves.
I have on the policy, I'm just wondering if we should, I'm sure once everyone reads it, they'll understand that A, B, and C to follow are the reserves we're talking about. And I'm wondering if we should put that somewhere in parentheses after reserves, or just leave it.
I would just leave it, because reserves are reserves, and they may change. And this would, if we added other reserves, it would be covered by this, and if we deleted reserves, it wouldn't be covered by this, right?
I see what you mean.
Reserves are reserves.
Yeah, I'm just saying that for anyone reading it, and it says, and maintaining reserves so as to have budgetary. So I just wanted people to understand that the reserves were the free cash. And
think-
the blah, blah, blah.
Do you think if we were to rework this sentence, it might make it clearer? Like,
I think that's a good, yeah, maybe that's all we need.
But
It's just that-
I'm just wondering,
Or
if
we put it in a different place.
maybe even at the, just move it to the
Just
front
move it to the front.
of
I
that.
think that's a good idea.
Although there, it's really introducing it's doing the segue into the next,
Right,
you know.
Yeah.
It kind of just,
yeah.
some isn't all that illogical.
You've got a lot of notes on this one, so.
Wait till we get to stabilization fund.
Okay.
Ah, just a second.
Ted, did you want to share?
Yeah, under free cash, it says that if we have free cash above 5% of the annual budget, it must be, let's see, it's used to offset unfunded liabilities. And I'm scratching my head, what are unfunded liabilities? Is that OPEB?
Part of it.
Yeah.
And maybe, that's great, but then what happens when, will there always be an unfunded liability? That's what I'm after. And I'm not sure, because you have a prescription here, a proscription, what you're gonna do when it's over 5%. And for the president, it's very operable, but will it always be?
When did we vote on 3 to 5% to begin with?
I don't know.
I think that's really odd, because years ago, and at the bottom it says 350, we had it down to 250, and the reason why, and the reason I wanted you to bring in, if you could, from the Notchka, was because every year we thought we were doing such a good job balancing the budget, and all the departments had what they needed, and there wasn't gonna be a whole lot of turnbacks. And come to find out, every year we had over $1 million. And we have to tax before we know that we have $1 million
3
coming
to
back
5
to us.
is the number in the, what is it, the
The
small
over-
towns?
But best practices, but it doesn't have to be, that's a lot of money.
I don't know.
That's
It's
just a
pretty,
crazy amount of money. I don't know,
it's-
because you're doing,
I
then
think,
you're gonna do 3 to 5% a year. You're gonna have a percentage for the stabilization fund. It just, I don't know, it just.
I think it's a holy number.
Crazy.
I don't
I just
think
think
you
it's
can
too
change it.
much. You're talking about $1 million.
Well, so I was able to get the numbers from the Notchka this afternoon.
Oh, we did.
Yep. And I can read these out loud to
That's
anyone
good.
who's concerned. So let me just give you hard numbers. So 2004, the certified free cash was about $900,000. 2005, it was $759. Then think this might be the period of time you're talking about. 2006, it's almost 1.4 million. 2007, 1.1 million. 2008, 1.3 million. 2009, 1.5 million. 2010, over 1 million. 2011, 790,000. 2012, 898,000. 2013, 844,000. 2014, 1.3 million. 2015, 983,000. 2016, 604. 2017, 1.07 million, and then 2018, last year, 776,000.
And this is with a target set at
350 or something.
350, and we had bumped it up to
But
350.
let's
That's
be-
also with state aid?
No, I just want to be really careful. So the reason the target was set is, from what I understand, the target was the amount that you wanted to have left over, but it wasn't necessarily what you were expecting would be the certified amount by DOR. Like, they always are expecting the certified amount to come in over 350. It's just that if we left much lower than 350, then the certified amount could start to creep lower and lower and lower. So I think, like, I actually think certified free cash of 776, which is, I think, last year's, is right in that 3 to 5% range. In fact,
So what's going on
The
there?
3 to 5, I
Our
believe,
million's
is
so
the
off right
percentage
now.
of free cash that you want to start the year with, that we
Right.
actually put into the
That's the
budget.
minimum.
Right.
And the 350, I think, is working well, I believe. And it
Yeah.
is lower than, it is definitely at the low end of 3, it may even be less than 3%.
Right.
Division of Local
But
Services, that's the 3 to
So
5.
what's the driver for the million plus though? I mean.
People underspend, we don't do a culvert, or we don't do
No.
a, you know, all kinds of
We don't
things.
hire a
And so
planner.
what are we missing though when we do the budget? I mean, if it's continually so high, we're taxing more than we need to be taxing if we end up with $1 million. So what are we missing? What aren't we doing that we
What is the
need to be
source of
doing?
the?
Well, I
delta
think,
between
I don't know whether it's a way to historically look back and say, here's the source of that excess that year. And it could be as simple as, 2 positions or 3 positions didn't get filled for the entire year, but you're gonna hire them next year.
But
So it doesn't
but
change
there's
the
so many
budget.
year runs at $1 million plus dollars.
well, and I
The
think,
history proves that's, I don't know, coming back.
I actually think that's why having these policies in place will help us manage that better. Just to give you a concrete example, last year for FY18, our certified free cash was 776,000. As a percentage of our total expenditures in FY18, that was 3.18%. So according to our policy, it would be within, but at the lower range of the 3 to 5%
Right.
range. And so I think that now that we have this in place, like, we can continue to track, like this year we'll have another data point and we'll see, okay, well, we knew we left $353,000 in free cash at the end of the most recent budget. When we get our certified free cash, probably in a couple weeks, it'll be interesting to see, like,
What
how we did.
did.
So,
I think the 5% just scares me, and on top of thinking about funding OPEB and funding the stabilization fund every year.
yeah.
Well, remember, the stabilization fund, I don't believe is intended to be something you need to fund every year, isn't it? It's supposed to be hanging out.
At $1 million,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's not
Did
like-
I read that?
They do
we're
have it
trying
as
to
a,
fund it?
they have a
That if
function
we
of
have
something.
a surplus in the overlay, that would be the second thing on the list? No, that was for a one-time, yeah.
Yeah.
The priority was the one time.
Oh, and you know what I wanted to say, for tonight's discussion, we should probably, when it comes to the overlay policy, which is later, we should reserve a little bit of judgment, because I've asked the Board of Assessors to also take a look and give feedback. So what you have doesn't incorporate any of their input, so they might have some.
Yeah.
They might have
You
some
won't
thoughts.
Never mind, I'm not gonna say, beg them to let go of some of that surplus, but we need to spend it. No, and they're pretty conservative too about numbers, which I think we fussed at them before about being too conservative.
If the 776,000 is a 3.81%, then the 350,000 that we have going into the year, the plan is nominal 2%.
Right.
Which is less than the Division of Local Services says, 3 to 5. But it works.
But it works.
It works fine. It's a good number, because we have a very stable tax base, and we have a very stable expenditure base, if you can call it that.
Mhm.
Labor is contracted, it's very predictable.
Just to be clear, did you not say it was 3.18?
It was 3.18, not 3.81.
3.18,
So
okay.
your 2% just became 1.7 or something.
All right, so half of that's 1.5, so it's just a little
Yeah.
350.
Okay. I just wondered where some of the numbers came from, if we ever voted on it.
Okay,
Okay.
So,
I guess we're saying there'll be always unfunded liabilities. If not, we'll deal with it when that happens, because this can be,
Yeah.
all right.
And where did we, we done with that one?
Oh, go ahead.
and stuff on stabilization funds, if we're going on to that.
How, you wanted to know how we were doing on that?
No, I'm
Yes.
Oh, here you go,
Never mind
Craig.
comment.
At the bottom of that free cash, the town will limit its use of free cash to funding one-time expenditures and will appropriate any excess above 5% of the annual budget to a stabilization fund.
Oh, is it?
Okay, so.
So that flows over to stabilization fund.
So it is saying fund it if, that's where it should go.
Sure, that the stabilization fund itself is supposed to be, it doesn't say it, you probably should say it, it should have a limit.
Well, and it doesn't. Well, I think because the limits, there used to be a limit, but there is none anymore.
Okay.
I
We
mean,
should
the
consider
state,
putting a limit in
right,
there.
mandated, I think I read that right.
You want a limit on what? I didn't catch
Well,
that.
there's no, according to the policy, it seems there's no hard limit on the amount of the stabilization fund. So, I mean, there's an implicit limit, it seems, but.
There's a minimum.
Right, but there's no maximum, so.
Right.
If.
Let's put it this way.
I,
We're only at 4%, so we're not
Sure.
meeting our
Sure.
minimum balance of 5%.
But if every year we take our
we don't
excess free
have
cash.
to. I mean, it's not something that because it's in best practices, we have to do it. I mean, I would like everybody, if they get a chance, before we vote on this or go forward, to read what Southborough did. Southborough only has a $400,000 stabilization fund, and they consider that to be high. And they went through, it's amazing what they did to determine whether or not it was gonna affect them in any way, shape, or form. And the way they thought about it was, how does this affect the taxpayer? Because that's what we're all trying to do, right, is do what's best for the town and the people in the town. So if you could go online and read Stabilization Fund and Southborough, it says 2010, but they are still using the same now, 2018, for their stabilization fund, the thoughts behind it. And I could go over all the things they said about bond rating, about interest rates, is, the loan bond interest points, because there's no correlation at all in the amount that we have in our stabilization fund as to the rating that we get. And there's a lot of other things that make so much sense if you read it. I think it's just too high at 5%. I think it's kind of crazy. A minimum balance of 5% of the current operating budget is very high. It sits there. How many times have we used in 20 years? So what percentage of that has the merit in it sitting there all these years? If I moved out of town, all the money I put into it would do me no good. I'd rather have bonded for something rather than take my money and put it in a stabilization fund. It's better in my pocket. I don't know.
Does Southborough present their formula or the math, the arithmetic they use to arrive at?
No, they actually did not.
I mean, they
started with the
defend it, but do they
400,000.
have how?
Well,
actually-
they wanted to increase it, and they decided they would look at everything and all the different reasons why they should, why people believe why a higher stabilization fund makes sense. And they dispelled so many different things, but they looked at every angle, and they came up, and they DOR, they did. You have to read it. It's quite lengthy, but it's educational.
Did they look at all their insurance policies and what their deductibles are? I mean, if you have
I don't know
Yeah.
if they did that.
low deductibles, you probably don't need, you know.
Well, I don't know about that. They were specifically talking about the stabilization fund.
If the number truly
And
is.
it's interesting, and I would like everybody, if they could read it. I think you get a different idea of how in-depth they
We will-
challenged it, and,
If the number really is 400,000, I'm also gonna guess that their Southborough's budget overall is considerably larger than us. So as a percentage, 1%, something like that, 2%?
yeah,
I don't know the number, but
you know, I
that's
didn't write it
something to
all
look at.
down.
So don't just say 400,000 is good for us, because
Well, no, I'm not. I'm just, a million may be good for us. You know,
well, a
maybe
million
just
is
a million.
5%.
I know, but that's it. Don't put any more in it for a very long time.
And
Because
this,
how many times have we used it? Twice? In 20 years I've been here.
No.
I think that's it.
Do you recall why? Just curious.
No, the first time I don't remember. The second time it was, we had to replenish it. It was, we needed it to, I don't remember what we were actually trying to pay for, but we knew we were gonna get the money back, and we put it right back into, I think, we were getting the money back from the tower, the cell
This is
tower.
probably a
We put it
stupid
right back
question, but-
into the,
where it has fluctuated over time, is that money the source of the annual budget after the year? I mean, if there's one point, you said 1.7, or I don't know what the things were. I mean, if it's gone up and down, where has the excess money gone over the years?
what's going up and down?
Okay,
Okay,
so
free cash.
this-
Oh, free
the
cash.
free cash, the stabilization fund, I had the numbers down here. But it was, you know, what, this year it was this and this, it was that, and now it's down to X. What have we used that money before, for? I just don't know.
You're not.
In
make sure you're
theory,
confusing-
capital items,
Oh, yeah, and we have.
one-time
We-
expenditure.
Okay,
Yeah.
In theory, I
okay.
can't say for sure, but that's.
Because I guess the question that I have is,
I
we
don't know,
also
I'm not a
struggle
finance
to
person.
do
but-
things around our capital equipment.
But the stabilization fund is if we have a fire in a public building, or we lose a roof or something, and insurance doesn't.
No, it's not, actually. It could be even more than that.
Heating
It's
plant
not
or
just
something.
for emergency uses. We could have more than one
Well,
stabilization.
why
fund.
then does it fluctuate so much?
So
Are we
the
regular?
free cash and stabilization are different.
Two different, okay.
Stabilization
Yeah.
is in the $1 million range now.
Yeah,
I believe.
okay.
Yes, it's actually,
It's a percentage of the budget.
It just sits over there, it's just a
Stabilization.
bucket of cash.
Operating budget.
it's $989,000.
Yeah.
So that's the stabilization,
That's the general
It's a
stabilization.
rainy day fund.
as opposed to,
Free
So-
cash
Cash
is
different.
So we
left over
have,
at the end of the year.
yeah, we have free cash, we have the general stabilization fund. Are you looking
Not here.
for,
Conservation, upstairs?
I think they're at the Houghton.
yeah, I think at the Houghton building.
Thank you.
We have the wastewater treatment capital stabilization fund, which is very small.
We have a school budget, E&D, excess and deficient
But
account.
that has
which-
nothing to do with
No,
the
no, but
stabilization hour, of the
it's
general.
buried, a
stabilization.
portion of that is in the school budget.
Yeah, but that's 3 towns.
Okay.
Right?
But
That's funded, that's different.
But when you
Because
start-
we're talking about Bolton only,
when you start,
because that's tri-town.
when you start multiplying percentages of our budget,
Oh, true.
saying we
Yeah,
need
sure.
to
Yeah.
have
Yeah, that's up.
stabilization fund is where we need free cash as a percent of our budget. Our budget has a bucket of money in it, cash from the education department.
Right.
And so you're
So-
penalizing yourself to have free cash and stabilization on another bucket of free cash and stabilization.
Sure.
And so,
I'm sure that makes sense to you, doesn't make sense?
well,
Makes sense.
So it's clearly,
I will talk with you.
it's clearly worth looking at Southborough, just from.
Rationale.
Yeah, just from the description here, mitigate emergencies and unanticipated events. Going down the insurance path, that's the reason we have insurance, to deal with emergencies and other blah, blah, blah. So if we can take care of several major events, deductibles in the same year, then we might not want much more than that. It's certainly worth looking at. But I'll still stand by my earlier statement that a maximum balance might be a good, a maximum number might be a good thing to put in the policy as well, because the way it is now, it says your old stuff that's left after free cash is done into the stabilization fund. So if nobody pays attention and manages that, you're gonna be at 6% and 7% and 8%. Might take a couple of years, but there should be some language in there saying, let's not let it grow uncontrollably. It sounds like we may change it, or we might advocate changing it anyway.
Advocate changing both the floor and the ceiling.
Yeah, I agree with you, Craig. You
Yeah.
know, I mean, it just, for the minimum, it uses the word endeavor. It's not a must or shall, it's endeavor. It's
No.
it's a goalish thing. But, so the same way, there could be a, maybe even not a concrete amount on the maximum, but
Sure.
a caution or
Yeah.
some philosophical statement of, that kind of defines it.
I presume the reason for the endeavor is to not require it to be fixed during a shortfall year. That is, if it gets drawn down by several emergencies in the same year, you might not want to have to tax the entire amount back up to fill that 5% or whatever percent your goal is in that 1 year.
And then to try and pay it back in 2 years.
Right, that's two, I think two is actually
I mean,
within
what
the
if we
next 2
needed,
fiscal years.
yeah, that 700,000, you don't know what coming up, and then we have to pay it, we have to, because we have it in writing, it's there.
So that means,
That's kind of hard sometimes too,
so maybe we'll want to change.
make appropriations.
I'm going to argue the other way though. If our number falls to, if our target, let's say 400,000, if it becomes 100,000 because we had some expense, we probably don't want to wait 2 or 3 years to replenish that.
No,
So,
but maybe, what if it were way more than that?
yeah, I don't know.
And then that would be hard to replenish, 600,000 in 2 years.
So I think maybe endeavor might be a good thing to have in there, but the minimum of 2, or the maximum of 2 years might be a bad thing to have in there. My earlier concern is actually in this paragraph as well, regarding not being allowed to withdraw more than 1/3 of the general stabilization fund balance if it gets below the minimum level. And, I mean, I understand kind of that you don't want to have it go down to 0 or anywhere near it, but.
But it's there for a reason, right? I mean,
If
if
you're
you
never
need
gonna-
it,
Right. I guess the reasoning for that is in case there are 4 emergencies in the same calendar year, or fiscal year, whatever, and each one takes 40% of the stabilization fund, after 2, you're gonna be out of money, or 3 years, I guess. But at the same time, if these things start happening, perhaps we should have a special town meeting to get some more money or to agree to rearrange funds.
Well, you know what, it would be catastrophic if we had to use it all. I mean, it'd have to be something really bad,
Mhm.
because for years, we never had a stabilization fund, and then we did, and we only used it a couple of times, and not a lot of it, and replaced it the same year
It would be really
that we
good to
used it
find
the
out.
last time.
the two
So it would
funds.
have to be really, and I can't imagine what could happen, that we'd have to withdraw that. Well, I know, right? I mean, but if I go by history.
I'd like to draw your attention to the last sentence in the first paragraph under B. Prior to the adoption of this policy, the town established and appropriated to a general stabilization fund. What is the reason for that kind of historical statement? I mean, it does.
Where are
what-
you? Oh, I see, the last sentence,
You
yeah.
know, why are we telling, how is it part of the policy that it tells what we used to do? Which sounds like what we currently do also, but.
I don't think we need it here, but I think it's because if we happened to be a town that had not established a stabilization fund before, then I think we'd have to adopt certain sections of Mass General law to even be able to do this. So this, I think, is just showing that we've already done this, so it's
To
not.
me, it's wordy. I mean,
Yeah,
we could put it in every other financial section here that we used to do this, or I don't know. Unless it's additive, why put it in?
Yeah, we can get rid of it.
But I don't know, others may have an opinion.
I was also thinking that if, I just emailed everybody the Southborough thing that Connie was talking about. I think we should all look at it. But we might consider revising this to be basically establishing a range of 3 to 5% for stabilization, kind of like we did for free cash. The benefit of that is we're actually at 4 right now, so we would be within the range. But, I think we should all take a look at what Connie suggested and see whether we have any concerns about departing too far from 5 as the target. And, if we want to consider a range of 3 to 5, we should talk about whether we're comfortable with that.
Well, it's like, okay, we could just change the word minimum to maximum, and I might be. There's your limit. No, I think we need more thought and, before we just put this into practice. And the 2 fiscal years, that, I don't know. Maybe there's a way we can have parameters there too. If it fell below a certain amount, we have to replenish it within whatever, but I don't know, because it could create a hardship.
Our successors and heirs will figure that out.
Yeah, or maybe if there's just a way to add language that gives us a
We don't
little
want
bit more flexibility.
Strip them.
I think it can help the town.
You want to
It
have
can't hurt
flexibility. I
us.
think one of the issues that we have is we haven't necessarily invested in this town over a period of time. So every time there's something new, it becomes this big fight or a big debate about whether we need it or not. I mean, there's a lot of deferred maintenance we're looking at. I mean, there's just a lot of stuff. And I think a healthy savings account, should something occur, is an important thing to
Why don't we
have.
just pay for it as whatever instead of bond for it,
But
pay for it,
But-
instead of it
It
sitting
would
there.
be
it
something
doesn't-
that's not insured that is extremely important. And I don't know what that is.
Yeah, better not come up. A lot of
Well,
people in
that's
town don't
the
want to touch it
disaster
ever.
piece, but
They
for
voted
where I'm reading this, it's not only for something that is unanticipated, it's also for capital expenditures that are required.
Exactly, but on town floor, when it came up the first time, it was voted down to take any money out of it. And I can't remember, so many years back, before I was on this board. And I can remember a particular person on the advisory board that got up and spoke about, you do not touch it because it's not an emergency fund. I mean, it's an emergency fund. Everybody is under the impression that it was an emergency fund for a very long time.
Well,
Until now, it's spelled out other reasons it can be used. I remember, I think we talked about.
And to me, that's a good thing, because it's a resource for something.
I agree,
Yeah.
I agree, it never was looked at like that, or before it was defined anywhere in print.
there's an
It
obvious,
only was an emergency fund.
there's an obvious conflict between the first and second paragraphs. One saying it's okay for include
Yes, I have that
emergencies or
written
capital
down.
expenditures, and the other one is
And the other one says
emergencies
emergency funds,
or
right?
unanticipated events.
Yes, unanticipated.
Well, I don't think that's a conflict. I think the first spells out legally what's possible, and the second spells out what is a matter of policy we're trying to use it for.
Is an unanticipated event roughly equivalent to a capital expenditure?
That's what I said, does unanticipated events include capital expenditures? Exact same.
It seems like a strange thing to have. I mean, I guess sometimes you have to have a capital expenditure to deal with an unanticipated event, but,
No. So what I'm saying is the first paragraph is broad,
mhm.
the second paragraph is narrower in emergencies or other unanticipated events. That's related to emergencies in the first paragraph, not necessarily.
Just further defines it.
Yeah,
Hmm.
not, I mean, obviously, capital expenditures might be included
Mhm.
within
Sure.
an emergency or unanticipated event. But I think that we're, as it says there, can be appropriated for any lawful purpose.
Yeah.
I think we're trying to, in the second paragraph, have it be something that is out of the ordinary.
Yeah.
Hmm.
You have an earthquake, and every culvert gets destroyed, or roads have to be rebuilt right now.
Or a
You
truck
can't-
falls down into a culvert.
I saw it the same way Craig saw it.
The other value of the stabilization fund, it gives us a basis to argue that free cash and other buckets don't need to be as large as maybe some people feel they should.
Or vice versa.
Because when you have this $1 million, 900 or something, that takes care of emergencies. So everybody doesn't have their own.
But the
separate-
difference is, free cash, we can decide what to do with free cash, more or less. But the stabilization fund, you have to have, I think, you have to have a meeting, a town meeting to decide on, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
2/3,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So there's the difference,
Yeah.
I think. You know, you're talking about a bucket here or a bucket there. I'd rather have the bucket of free cash rather than the bucket of the stabilization fund, BSI.
It almost seems like the
Well, that's
general,
because we can.
it almost seems like since you need to have a
Because
town
if you're
meeting to
gonna,
deal
or somebody
with
might argue.
the general
well, we're not
stabilization
gonna use
fund,
it for capital
it-
expenditures.
its
They won't
value as an
use it for
emergency or
capital expenditures. We
unanticipated
can't have
event
free cash.
thing is
We pay for a
reduced.
lot of things with free cash, without having to go to town meeting.
I don't think that that's necessarily true.
What now on this?
But no,
I'm
it's-
sorry.
Go ahead, repeat your comment.
If you have to have a town meeting to deal with the stabilization fund, its value in mitigating emergency problems or unanticipated events, almost by definition, has to be reduced, because it's gonna
Can't
take
be
4
too
weeks.
much of an emergency.
Right, it's gonna take 4 weeks to make a new special town meeting, or whatever
Yeah,
that
well-
is.
If it had to
Yeah.
happen sooner,
Yeah,
wouldn't you think it could? I mean, there's some limit of, you have to post a notice so many days ahead.
I know it was, I think it was over the dam, Five Shire Dam. I suggested we use the money because we were going to be fined by the state, I forget how much a day,
Hmm.
$100, $1,000 a day, it was pretty high, whatever it was. And we needed to get the study done, and said, no, that wasn't an emergency. So, but it would have to, if we used it, it had been done rather quickly too. You'd have to have, how much time does the town need to give its taxpayers when it has a special town meeting? How much
How much
notice?
notice? That's a great question. I think it also would depend, I think there might be different notice requirements if it's an emergency. Um,
Yeah, because that might answer the question,
If I
about
recall
how much of
correctly,
an emergency is it?
if I recall correctly, a couple of years ago, 2015, when the budget was voted down, they had another one just about a month after the first one. So there's.
I think they came back even quicker than that.
There's an approximate answer. But yeah. On the other hand, I guess that, I misspeak. I think it took them a week or something before they decided, well, there had to be a new one, but they didn't start that night to publicize that there was a new one coming up. I assume that there'd be, if there was such an emergency, it would be 3 weeks or even less.
Because it was going to shut down town government.
So it sounds like this is one that we're gonna have to revisit.
Sounds-
Are we ready to move on to the next one
Yeah.
for now?
That'd be great.
Anything overlay surplus? Or,
Well, forecasting, we do set the priority as funding the general stabilization fund as number 2 on that list, so.
So
And
that,
why just general? Because, I mean, we do have the sewage one, right?
Mhm.
I mean, why would it be just the general one? A one-time revenue source? Couldn't it be, a special
What paragraph are you in?
stabilization from, well, I'm looking at
the forecasting policy.
the forecasting policies, and it says it prioritizes a one-time revenue, and it has the general stabilization fund. I don't understand why it
That's-
can't include a
Oh.
special.
That's
as
that
a-
sentence we either took out or contemplated taking out.
The word general?
Yeah, where's the word general here?
It's in the numbers. She's looking at the indented
Number
number.
2. if
Number
you go
2,
to the-
okay. Let me
No.
see where my arrow
Yeah, oh, I'm
is here.
so sorry. They, where that blue square put
Yeah, yeah.
right here.
Okay.
General stabilization fund.
Yeah, what is that?
So maybe,
Maybe it's just stabilization fund.
Yeah.
and then
because they got
stabilization
the-
fund, and then in a little s in parentheses. Because then that would give you the flexibility to include the
Right.
wastewater treatment.
I agree. I think that would be good. I like that idea.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, on B, the expenditure guidelines, here we go with level funded and maintenance funded.
Mhm,
Well, I know for all the years I've been on this board, and level funded meant,
Could I
Took-
just,
oh yeah,
I didn't-
go ahead if you're
it's-
not,
it's
yeah, you're
relative
not
to-
here.
it says the town hereby establishes the following priority. Now, we've already put up there, stabilization fund should be what was it, a minimum of 5%? Does that, I mean, I'm looking, have we set our own rules that never let us get past 2, we're not able to fund OPEB if we have to build up the stabilization, because this is priority. This means you do 1 before you do 2, 2 before you do 3.
Yeah, that order,
So switch it to have OPEB second.
I will.
Well, I don't know, or
Yeah,
get the
because
word,
we'll have verbiage on how to fund the stabilization fund. Well, we'll have verbiage for OPEB too, but
maybe just
I
get the
would
word
think-
priority
You know
out.
what?
Well, of course, 1, 2, 3 versus bullets has the notion
some
of
train of
priority.
thought
It's
thing.
how literal we mean that.
Well, I don't know.
I mean, I think
Which is
what we may
more-
want to do is put some money
Just bullets.
in stabilization fund and
Right.
some in OPEB.
You're
But
right.
this says, by
An
our own
order.
words, that we have to fill one.
One
bucket.
before two, two
Yeah.
before three.
Maybe,
So-
Last.
Just
Just
get
bullet.
rid of
If I
the word
say-
priority.
I'll get rid of, I'll get rid of actually the word order and just say the following priorities
And then just do
Right,
bullets.
and
and then bullets, because then it doesn't,
And then you can use
You're gonna
some
get rid of the
judgment.
word priority order?
I'm gonna get, so the way that I've edited it, it'll say, additionally, the town hereby establishes the following priorities when appropriating.
Get rid of the
one-time
word order.
revenues.
Okay.
Right, so
Yeah,
it's-
and then turn it to bullets
Right.
instead of numbers.
that's a good idea.
Okay, how do I get bullets? I gotta-
Oh, don't worry, I'm editing it on my version, so you don't have to worry about that.
I should know how to do that. Insert.
Okay, so
Whatever.
level
Okay,
funded.
sorry.
All right.
So for years, level funded was, we take out the things that we couldn't control, subtract it out of department's budget, and the rest of it was level funded. That's what level funded
That's the
meant.
terminology we use.
That's what we used.
I'm sorry,
So
where are you
that-
at? I've lost track of you.
We're on expenditure guidelines
Okay.
on page 15. That's what we were doing all these years as far as level, I'd like to go to zero base, but.
I like these words. They force us to.
I know,
use correct.
I do, but
Precise
we
words.
really have to let the departments know. Because when they hear level funded, that's what they think of right away, is, because I know Brad and Don, level funded means you take out steps, COLA,
Labor, you
salaries,
take out the labor part of it.
labor,
And
and then all the line
And-
items and everything,
And
or,
this get back to the discussion
Level
that
funded.
I brought up last time, is that when we were at the meeting, is that we really, by level funding, everybody feels that they have the budget they had last year. And there's really no opportunity to be fungible among budgets. If someone comes up with a big cost-saving idea that's gonna cost X to implement, where do you ever give them the money if it's all?
well, no, they have to prove that they need it. That's the whole idea behind
Right.
being able to increase it, because you can increase it, and that's how we looked at it.
Well,
It's level
I
funded
guess,
services.
wait a second, Connie, because my suggestion that we had is that at some point, shouldn't we say, we'd like you to submit a budget with what would you do with 5% more and what would you do with 5% less of where you're level funded?
Yeah,
So that you have an ability to begin to look among and between departments to set priorities, or, this is an extraordinary opportunity to save money over the long term, we want to give the 5% extra.
I don't know, because sometimes I feel like there's people who have pet projects, or maybe something.
But they all get judged, and I just think there's no creativity. Put in a level budget, I'm gonna get this money and I'm gonna fight for it, and that's the end of that. I just like the concept of people thinking scenarios. What if we had to cut you, what would you cut you? And if you had an extra 5%, what would you do?
That's why I like a zero-based budget. Let's start at zero and go from
Then you get a
there.
level budget.
I think these words are good. And I think
Not
that
necessarily.
before we write, were you guys, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
That these words we need to refresh everybody's understanding of these before
Yes.
we do the budget guidance.
Well, that's what
letter.
I said, because
Because it'll be a little different this year.
It will be.
It'll have the word maintenance in it,
Yeah,
nobody's heard of maintenance.
and I want us
if
to
that's what we
be,
mean.
I want us to be careful to remember the difference between a forecasting policy and a budget letter that goes out, because I think we might, you guys are making sort of different points, but either one of your points might be incorporated into a budget letter. It's not necessarily the place to put it into the policy.
Right.
So, because this policy is about what we're using when we're doing our forecasting. It's not necessarily saying this is what we are, this is the approach that we're asking
Okay.
when our, you know what I mean? When our
Yeah,
departments
yeah.
submit their budgets. Does that seem like a fair distinction? Yeah, I think we're gonna have a lot of conversations about the budget letter.
Yeah.
Are we done with paragraph B?
Sure.
Going once, twice.
Yeah, we just need to let the department know. Information.
Okay.
Financial forecast guideline. Oh, shouldn't we include, see, I think this is backwards to me. We have capital planning going out and doing a 5-year projection, and they're not even included in this. So I would think the town treasurer, the town accountant, capital planning board, and the advisory committee will also aim to prepare a 5-year financial projection of revenues and expenditures.
Well, the capital planning committee doesn't really have revenues that I know. I guess it does have expenditures, but it's already in the plan to do a 5-year plan, I think, for the capital planning.
Yeah, hold on a minute.
Mhm.
So I think the way, and this is why it's
It's
not
the way it's
clear. Yeah,
written.
the way that it's
Yeah, I see
written,
that.
yeah,
Yeah, I see
so
it now.
so this, basically, we're saying we're gonna have a policy of forecasting basically the operating budget, and then combined with the capital budget, we'll have our overall 5-year forecast.
Oh, yeah, it didn't hit me, and now it does.
I get hung up on the word under the first paragraph there, I guess. Capital improvement plan.
We're getting rid of improvement, it should just be capital.
It should be capital plan.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a whole section on capital improvement plan coming up for a call.
Because you can extend the life by 5 years or whatever, and it doesn't improve anything, it's just... Well, good. All right.
Okay, so we're on OPEB,
Are we on
Anything
OPEB?
else?
anything else?
Okay, so now we're on to the OPEB policy.
So, I think we looked at the actuaries in order to figure out how much to fund it, right?
Yeah, I believe we get a report every 2
Yeah.
years.
And so I think it was around what, 100,000, 108, I think?
Oh, gosh, I thought it was 160, 70 somewhere.
Well, it was.
178.
178. Okay,
We had the ability to fully fund it this year.
so
Yeah.
we fund that, we fund the stabilization fund, free cash. I don't know, it seems like my taxes are gonna be going up. There's also a train of thought that the state's gonna bail us out. Excuse me, the state's gonna bail us out.
Yeah.
I've talked to
Dream on,
some people
Alice,
don't even
dream on.
want to support OPEB. Isn't that wild?
Well, with the
I'm not on that page.
With the 40 or 50 new houses going into town this year, we might not have a problem.
Yeah, there are a few big developments.
And this is 2030, 2034, when's it due?
Yeah, it's,
Something like that, right?
yeah.
Yeah. Like 20 million? It's a lot.
In the paragraph that starts, as custodian, the town treasurer will be responsible. Near the end, or maybe this is the last sentence, ... the town will analyze its option to invest its OPEB trust. The town can't analyze, it has to be the treasurer or
Yeah,
somebody,
The town treasurer.
something different than that.
Oh, and Ted, these links should actually be working. Are they not working
They're not.
on your?
Let me try one. look at the little hand, deal, or little,
You don't?
no?
Oh, I do.
Oh, you have Apple, so that's what you get for that extra on this computer.
Wait, can I see? Turn it.
Turn it.
It's just not, I wonder if there's any.
We don't need to,
So,
let's see. I'm trying to order.
Scroll down.
There's my
Yeah,
cursor.
and can you click?
Do a double click?
No, just regular click. Maybe left click?
Oh, open hyperlink, okay.
There you
Maybe
go,
that's it.
that's it.
Uh-oh.
Well, maybe I'm not hooked in with the.
Oh, yeah, you're not on, yeah.
So, all right, so it's a right click, all right.
But it'll be, once it's in a PDF format, I think it'll be
Yeah, yeah,
easier.
okay, that is. All right. Okay.
But we typically, we've only funded it, what, 3 times?
Oh,
Has it been 3
the
years?
Oaks.
Yeah, has it been
I think it's been
more?
longer.
I can't remember, 3 or 4 times.
Well,
3
we
or
were
4 years.
behind on funding it, weren't we?
We still are, even
Yeah.
at,
But we were able to get,
but we're doing a lot better than a lot of
Last year,
towns
yeah.
are, and we're doing a
Yeah.
lot better than the school board doing, and, but we don't actually have to fund the formula amount. I mean, we can vote on more or less or whatever. So if we had a surplus, just like it's stated, we could put
Is-
more in it or not.
Does the law let us do the actuarial calculation every 3 years versus every 2 years? Because if we just contribute based on the 2-year or 3-year increment, directionally it's going to be right. I mean, we're not at some critical phase, and if we can save 1 out of 3, you know, I don't know
Yeah.
whether it's 50% or 33%. But anyway, you save some money that way. I mean, if it says you should contribute 170, do 170 3 years in a row and then do the actuarials, and it depends on, you know, length of service, the success you've had in investing and a lot of things. But it's not the end of the world, I wouldn't think, going from 2 to 3 years, or even a longer
Right.
interval. But you save whatever that cost is.
Right.
So
Maybe
you're-
that's,
You're suggesting a change in
maybe just
paragraph A.
broaden it to allow a different interval.
Yeah, I'm just,
You know.
we will have to check to see whether we can.
We may not be able to, but we could just open the door here and,
Okay.
I mean, every other year seems a little,
Well, some people aren't paying it at all, so I would imagine you paid it every 3rd year.
I mean, we're not gonna get to, I don't know what our projected, was it 20 years to get out to what we want, or 10 years, or it's out there. So it isn't that we're gonna miss the bullseye, it's just,
Yeah, I see what you mean.
trying to save a few shekels.
Of course, funding does say, decision makers are committed to funding the town's annual required.
Oh, we definitely wanna do it annual.
Contribution.
That's, it's the calculation of the arc of
right, readjusting every 3 years.
Yeah, the readjustment.
Readjustment.
As every 2 years or as may be prudent or something, or financially acceptable or
Okay,
something,
so,
some legalese.
yeah, so this is why, so GASB 75, which is the standard cited in the, do you see the link there?
The Jim
The
Geo.
No,
government accounting standards.
GASB statement 75,
Down.
which is down in the references.
Yeah,
Down some more.
oh, more.
Yeah, down here, somewhere in here. Yeah.
So we-
Which one is it?
75.
Yeah, that requires
Which one is it?
75.
75.
75,
Yeah.
Gatsby.
That one.
So
Click on
that-
Oh, you can't get it.
he can't, but that statement is what requires the OPEB liability to be measured at least every 2 years. And it had previously been 3.
Oh,
So,
Somebody lobbyist, some lobbyist, cynical mind.
probably.
Oh, yeah.
there we go. Hey, we could
This
just
doesn't mean
try,
we have to follow it.
we
does
could
it?
just do it every 3, and then when they ask, we'll just say, Ted
Yeah,
suggested.
there you go. Yeah.
Go talk to Tim.
We didn't know it was 2. But you happy you did it?
No, it's
I mean,
okay.
come on.
Cut the tape.
Oh, go 2.4, 2.49, that's still 2.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, moving on to overlay.
On.
It's pretty straightforward.
Ted had suggested that we add advisory committee as
Yeah, and
receiving notice.
also,
In
you know what, I
section
think I
C.
might have missed this somewhere
Which
else.
section is that? Oh, yeah, overlay C. Overlay C.
Oh, yeah, right up here.
On,
Shall notify the board of selectmen advisory committee, town treasurer.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good to know.
And then you have, under C overlay surplus, shall vote on the matter within the next 10 days. Is that business days or just 10 days?
Yeah, we should say
Could we
calendar
have
days or
calendar days
business.
or business?
I
There's
checked.
another place too that is a 7-day one, and I'm going,
That's
and I
a little
can't,
urgent.
I'll have a look.
If it's longer than 2 or 3 days, it should be probably calendar days. There were
Yeah,
a couple
here,
in
the
there,
very
somebody
first-
had to turn in money
Page
within
3 as
24
well,
hours.
we have here. Page 3, also, we can look at that.
That's the next section.
7 days.
Yep, we'll do
So-
calendar.
Okay.
Yep, that's a good point.
That's on page 3, Ted. So that's
man,
calendar
page 3.
days. Yeah, at the top, it says 7 days, so we'll do 7 calendar days.
I'll go back and get that later.
Yeah, and so this one will be calendar days too.
Yeah, and the assessor's gonna get back to me after reviewing this policy
And
and
say
say, no.
Right. Well, they may miss it. I don't know.
So, in section C, the first paragraph, the vote was, so if the board of selectmen makes a written request, hold on, for a determination of overlay surplus, the assessors shall vote on the matter. So, what is the vote, what is the request for a determination of? That just to find out what the overlay surplus is? Or-
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah. And then,
but I
I
would
think
think that.
they
Because
used to
the
vote
first-
on how much they were gonna give us.
that's the idea where regularly they have to do it, but if for some reason the board of selectmen at a different time cycle than the board of assessors would wanted the assessment,
Okay.
then they make the request.
What's, and general funds undesignated fund balance, is that overlay surplus not appropriated by year-end closes to the general funds undesignated fund balance? That confused me.
Yeah, I'll have to pull up the funds summary that the town has at the end of the year.
They know what it is.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Okay.
I had the same question. I figured they have a
All right, so,
kind of an inbox for money.
okay, that's okay, as long as there's a definition.
no, that's good
somewhere.
though. We might want to add a definition.
Okay.
That's a good point.
Of course, with revenue turnovers, I would assume that everybody has to be honest.
Oh yeah, so those
Pocket
ones,
$5 here or there. No, I'm joking. Well, there's a big section on cash, that's why, I think. Oh, yeah, and you had a question here. This is your question, right? Does this reflect current practice? Is that,
Yeah, about the,
yeah. Page 23,
Oh, 23, are we?
yeah.
Are we on revenue turnover?
Yeah, we just turned to revenue turnover.
yeah, it depends on the pattern
Yeah.
sheet, yours is 19.
Right. So there's no owner for revenue turnover.
Right.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, so actually these last few policies, I need to add owners because they
Yeah.
were policies that existed
Came
in
from
a
us,
different
right?
form.
Treasurer.
On the, under the word policy, I like the word promptly.
Wait.
And promptly turnover is timely, is not a word. I mean, in a contract, you require somebody to
Paragraph.
promptly do
Under policy.
under policy.
Okay.
I'm not, I don't feel
Yeah.
strongly about it, but,
Yep.
or theft and promptly turned over.
Well, promptly
It's a-
tells you,
It's a,
yes.
promptly is,
They put promptly in there, timely, I don't know what that means.
Yeah, timely is broad to me. What's timely? It depends on.
within the same fiscal year.
Yeah, that's long.
Or maybe next
That's
fiscal year.
broad. Or, yeah, it's too
Promptly is-
vague, right? That's
Anyway, let's see what else.
Each department must turn
Promptly,
over
just
at least
turn-
weekly
Somebody
and must
highlighted in
do
yellow.
so immediately when
That I
collections.
did.
That must really be important.
So,
No, I just highlighted it so that I would know that we need to check to see whether it
Because
reflects.
then it goes on
Current
to
practice.
describe it even more definitely. So each department must turn over at least weekly and must do so immediately when collections total 500 or more. All
Maybe-
current month's turnovers be completed on the last business day of the month, no later than 11 a.m.
That's if
So
it's
if you need-
$500 or more. But the before, the timely is just the, any amount, not
But,
any
but,
amount
but,
less.
but the sentence says they have to do it at least weekly.
Yeah,
And then
oh, yeah,
there's
so
more
that's-
definition, when it's more than $500,
Ah.
you want to keep it in your drawer. You want
So
it
it's
there.
not, so promptly might not be the word either to replace timely.
Well, I think that's why they used timely,
Timely,
because in some cases it's weekly, in some cases it's sooner, in some cases
It's
it's within
later.
24
Yeah.
hours.
Or it could be,
do we want to make it, do we want the change, that to be changed?
so yeah, because it could be $400 and they don't have to turn it over in that
Except to
week.
the end of the week. Yes, they do. That week they do. At least weekly, everything has to be turned over.
Well, it just
And if
says
you have
each department.
$500, you would turn it over immediately because you don't want it kicking around.
That's cumulative receipts of 500 or a receipt
Yeah,
of 500?
right.
Either or.
Yeah, cumulative,
Where
So,
does it say that?
probably not.
so you don't even need the timely, just turned over to the treasurer, because like you said, Ann, the next sentence tells you when,
So you must turn it over at least weekly,
right?
and you must do it immediately when the collections total $500 or more.
So you don't even need the timely.
I think you need a different word there for immediately, or a different description for immediately.
And anything that comes in the month, the last sentence
Sure.
is, it has to come in the last day of the month.
Either one will work. I just, promptly.
You can
It's no
leave
big
it.
deal.
It's not a big deal.
No.
It's not. But it is defined, just as Ann
You
said.
you
the
get
next
rid of
sentence
timely.
said.
Yeah.
I'm with you too. I would get rid of it.
So, back to my immediate question. So somebody gets a revenue at 4:58 on Friday night. Do they have to march right over to the place they're depositing it, transferring it to, and get it there? Is immediately
Well, it
truly
says weekly, so they
No.
have 5 days to get
$500?
it.
They get $500.
Oh, the $500. Thought you said.
Yeah, under
400
C,
something.
under C, it says, what you're saying, cash booking deposited at the bank within 24 hours. And like you had the question with Friday afternoon, is that feasible? But people who have to implement this will have to answer that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
What's the current practice?
I mean, maybe there's a Dropbox or something and you put it in the bag and you just throw it in the thing. I don't know how it works.
But this is not depositing to the bank, this is getting to the treasurer collector.
I'm down on
Immediately,
level
so you
C.
leave your job, or you have to rush it over somewhere?
I don't
You
know.
know, that's what it sounds
Yeah.
like though, immediately
Right, that's-
means, you just tipped the scale to $500,
Yeah.
I have to leave, close down and go.
Craig, under
Turn it in.
C is where it has the 24-hour
It's a
deal.
good point.
And the bank.
Sure. Yes, okay, so I retain my concern about the word immediately.
Yeah,
Um,
not a
it's-
good
It
one.
would be impossible a lot of times, I imagine, unless the treasurer collector is in office anytime any other department that gets money
They could
might
go
be getting money.
within 24 hours.
Well, we don't know. And if the town hall is closed on Friday, then the last
That's
day of the
another
week is
subject.
Thursday, so
Well, how does
they
it- how
can
does
do
it-
it on a Friday.
Yeah.
Is this a new policy for them, or is this a codification of practice?
I think people other than us sitting here can answer the
Well-
feasibility of what's prescribed.
So this is a codification of practice that was reviewed by the current finance team, which includes the treasurer, the accountant, and the town administrator. But I think that these are all valid wordsmithing questions, so I think it would be fair for me to ask Nanachka or Kristen whether we want to define immediately more specifically,
Maybe by close of business day, right?
and to define 24 hours, you know, I think within 24 hours or the next business
Business
day.
day. Yeah, because,
Does
are
it
there
talk
people
about?
here on Friday though? Is anyone here Friday? Are they completely
Hmm.
closed?
No, they're
The next
closed.
business day when the treasurer or collector is
Yeah.
here, something like
But no, it's just a question I have. Is
Yeah.
they're closed completely or
I
are
don't
they
know.
here?
Yeah, Friday, there's nobody.
That's crazy. You know, I called a lot of towns and no town is closed on Friday. They have some hours.
Discussed it with Dawn.
What's a pet peeve, because I came one Friday twice. I've had people ask me and I didn't even realize it. And it's like, so if you have a holiday on a Monday and something happens, and you have, on a Thursday and you have to come in, you have to wait 4 days to get any kind of business done.
Got a plan.
Well, it's just not right for taxpayers. Open 4 hours, 2 hours, I don't know.
that. You can look up Pam's number in a phone book.
Well, I'd be upset too if somebody wanted to squash my 3-day weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would, but hey, take turns. I mean, doctors do.
Mr. Chairman,
Get control of your meeting, Mr. Chairman.
under
You
paragraph
gotta open his mouth.
D.
No,
D is in
I don't know, that's something different.
reconciliation. I think that word monthly at the end is a dangling something or other.
Where?
To me, it reads better if you said, will reconcile the cash book with bank statements and provide a monthly summary. Put the word monthly before summary
Yep.
Yeah.
of cash book balances
Mm.
to the town accountant instead of this. Is that a dangling modifier?
That's,
Just
it's
the
split.
place.
It's awkward.
I've never been accused of having dangling modifiers.
It's a split.
I'm kidding. Yeah, no, I think that's good.
It's something.
Let's
but
just do
it's-
I think it's okay. It's grammatically okay,
I don't mind moving
but
either.
if
It's
it
horrible.
makes,
No,
Yeah.
it should be together.
I want everyone to leave this meeting with a smile, so if that'll do the trick.
You got it.
All right, reconciliations?
Owner.
Yep. Good point.
Yeah, I think up front you can just have even a default owner or something if
Yeah, we'll do
not
that.
as stated. Let's see. Wow, no comments. Whoops. There's that word timely again under C, accounts receivable reconciliation. Second line up on the bottom, cash receipts are recorded timely.
Yep, we can,
I like promptly recorded.
okay.
But this timely depends whether your time is the same as my time. I think it's fine if I do it in 4 days. Define
If you
timely.
said we're gonna pay, issue a check on a timely basis, the writer of the check and the receiver of the check would have two different definitions
Exactly true.
of what that is.
Play the float.
Okay, so that's promptly recorded. That's all I have, I think.
Moving on to disbursements. Yep. Ted, you sent me a comment in paragraph D. Oh,
No,
D?
Go ahead.
D?
Section D,
Section D.
under emergency disbursement.
Yeah. I said, interesting that the Board of Selectmen is, I guess, group, they're not in the loop, in this loop. Let me see what other disbursements read through process. Made to address.
yeah, I have the word early
May
each month.
issue a manual check of the town accountant and town administrator. I think the authorization part of it is, I don't know. I mean, that's up to those guys really, what they, if,
Maybe leave it to them to raise that as a,
yeah, I mean,
I guess,
Board of Selectmen is really the people. I mean, they're elected by the people, so they're the people, and then here's the town administrator. I'm sure he counseled, he would coordinate with them, and they'd all be on the same page, but it doesn't say that.
I don't know about that.
I don't think, I mean, the Board of Selectmen, I think would be blindsided either.
Well, but it may tie his hands in order to get this emergency disbursement.
I'm not saying he has to authorize
out.
it, it should be, with
You don't get
advice,
try
or,
to get
with,
3 selectmen meetings.
oh, so Ted, you're suggesting having them in the loop up front, whereas I was thinking, on the back end.
you mean write the check and then notify him?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
No, I think the
He's
Board of
on the front
Selectmen,
end.
I mean, an emergency disbursement, there are probably some judgment that went into, there's option A, B, and C. We're gonna choose this option. It's more expensive, but we get it sooner. It's more expensive, but we get higher quality, this or that. I think the Board of Selectmen want to be part of that process and should be in the loop.
Well, you're
But it won't be
talking
an-
emergency,
Yeah, it won't be emergency
emergency
then.
expenditure that has to be done. They still have to report to the Board of Selectmen. But trying to track down 3 members of the Board
members
of Selectmen
On any-
to get their approval on a regular schedule, all of a sudden your emergency becomes delayed till whatever.
Well, then you need to, or not you, but one would need to,
This is
something,
What if
the
it's-
like,
accountant.
even if it
And
says,
town
so, do
administrator.
they vote on it? And then you have 2 to 1 against this emergency disbursement, what happens?
I think, I think the backup here is it's both the accountant and the administrator has to approve it.
Yeah.
That would
I'm
be
not
the accountant.
disputing who approves it. I'm saying that, best efforts should be used to involve the Board of Selectmen.
So, well, we don't, I guess, if I were administrator and I were faced with this, I'd send them an email, just did this,
Me
be
too.
done.
I mean, we're talking probably a big amount. We might even be talking
I mean,
taking
he
out of the
can't-
stabilization fund or something. And, I mean, I
Well, you
think the Board
can't
of
touch the
Selectmen,
stabilization fund.
and,
I don't think we can prescribe that here, and it's
No.
gonna slow down the emergency process.
Yeah.
You've got 2
He's gonna be
people.
waiting around for an answer that maybe
it's-
somebody come back.
there's
And,
Well-
well, how do you go about, once you do get in touch with these selectmen, the 3, what, do you ask for their opinion?
I
Do
think,
you
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it just
Well,
doesn't
I
make
think
sense
first
to
of all,
me.
how
to have
does
them on the front
one normally approve funds? I mean, the Board of Selectmen have a role in that, and
But this is,
this seems to bypass them.
but this is about disbursement. I think we might be getting bogged down in hypotheticals. I think this point should be raised
All right,
when the policies get to the Board of Selectmen. We
okay.
go to that meeting and raise it, because here's the thing. If it's a huge
They're
expenditure,
gonna know about it.
there's gonna be an invoice.
Yeah.
You know, like there won't actually have to be an emergency disbursement for any of that stuff. I think emergency disbursements, and maybe this is where we can ask them, I imagine it's smaller items where it's just like, we need to pay the tow truck today.
Right.
You know, like,
Yeah.
Oh, that kind of thing.
It's not
yeah,
that-
I don't think it's like,
I'm thinking emergency. Okay, applicability, the policy applies to the job responsibilities of the town accountant, the treasurer, collection, and the role of selectmen in approving warrants. It further applies to the department heads, officials, and employees who work for the town and have spending authority.
where are you looking?
He's
It's under
under,
applicability, if I
yeah.
didn't scroll back to, but I agree, I mean, it's up to the selectmen and the town administrator to sort it out, you know, it's
Yeah.
their sandbox, whatever they want to do.
Because, and the second part of that is basically saying there were employees who work for the town and have spending authority already.
Further applies.
Progress?
Just raise the question.
Okay. Well,
Audit,
speeding
Yeah.
means
it
speeding.
doesn't matter about early each month, right? Everybody knows what early each month means. I would think so.
So there's no petty cash, is that,
No,
No.
no cash,
no department
no,
petty cash? Hmm.
no.
Gotta have disbursement checks, okay. All right, that's good.
Owner, is that what you're gonna say about fraud risk?
No, I wasn't gonna say it again.
Okay.
Are we on to the next one?
Yeah, fraud risk.
Fraud.
That's about what I got to.
Does anyone know if this school, the Silver Regional School District has a similar policy, because we're exposed
Don't know.
there? And I mean, this is pretty good, what we have here.
I'm looking, but I don't know the answer to that question.
And maybe it's,
Well, you think it's a question worth asking, right?
yeah, I think just,
Be good to know.
I'm sure they do, but
Yep.
it'd be interesting if its nature and scope is very similar to this, because it seems pretty well thought out. And then under 6 is this capitalized noun, appointing authority. I didn't see it defined, and I don't know what an appointing authority is. Maybe it's commonly understood, but says if a suspicion of fraud is substantiated by the investigation, disciplinary action shall be taken by the appointing authority. Maybe the appointing authority did the investigation, maybe.
No, so in general, I think it probably doesn't have to be capitalized. And maybe we want to use a phrase other than appointing authority, but because this policy applies to not only employees but also elected officials, in the case of an employee, the appointing authority is typically the person who hired them. But for an elected official or for people like us, the appointing authority would be the nominating committee, things like that. So it's, I don't know if you want to use something other than appointing authority or...
Hiring manager would not work.
No, because they're not all hired.
Right. I'm saying that's why it wouldn't work.
Yeah, I think appointing authority is fine because everyone knows of the authority on which they were offered the opportunity to serve.
Okay, so I didn't know I mean, you've clarified the meaning. I had no idea.
Out of curiosity,
Appointing authority.
who would the appointing authority be for the members of the Board of Selectmen?
The people.
Yeah.
Just asking.
No, I
Yeah,
don't-
but I'm not saying, I don't have an answer.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's no supervisor.
Yeah.
but I think I do want to decapitalize that.
Yeah.
In fact, my question about the selectmen also applies to many of the other people in town, I think, who are elected. The town clerk, I think, is elected, and so on. I'll go through that.
Yeah.
Okay, what page are we on now?
We're in fraud, section 6.
Which page is that?
It is...
For us, it's 30, but I don't think you're...
32
Yeah.
by my...
Sorry.
All right.
Sorry.
Are we moving on to whistleblower?
I'm happy to.
It's kind of dry.
Whistleblower?
No, that's the next thing, but I thought I had several sections, maybe it's in whistleblower. Oh, yes.
I don't understand, like, under whistleblower numbers, after, well, it's not bullets, but indented, will result in discipline up to and including dismissal in accordance, up to what?
Or you're
Up to
looking...
and including dismissal in
Are we back
accordance
to
with
fraud?
the applicable.
And what is
No, we're still in
protection
whistleblower.
area?
So it means the most extreme thing is
Why didn't you
dismissal,
say it was on
Yeah,
discipline
but there
up
could
to
be stages prior to
including?
that.
I think. Whistleblower is
But
in
it's not-
both sections. There's a section for whistleblowers and then there's whistleblower protection in...
Fraud.
Discipline up to.
I
I
think
can
it-
take out all the rest.
I think it basically means anything, any form of discipline, including dismissal.
The sentence doesn't make sense, I think grammatically is what I'm saying.
It's an
Understand
often
that.
used terminology.
The
Up to and
violation?
including.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah,
maybe
it's-
that's
it's
one of
a
them.
Yeah, that's pretty
It's
standard.
legally
It's
used.
Yeah.
kinda-
There
Yeah,
you
it's
go.
pretty standard.
Okay,
it's like by example, but not limited to, you know.
yeah, up to. including.
So you could get dismissed, is what that says.
Absolutely.
Up to and including dismissal, period, yeah.
You won't just get
But no,
disciplined.
no capital punishment or anything like that.
Not
No,
yet.
no, you won't be putting the stocks on the common.
That's a good idea. We have a common now. We can
I'm glad I don't know about things like that.
All right, where are we?
We are, I
The
guess,
next
page-
policy, or
I've got a
Yeah.
comment here, I'm trying to understand my own comment
Whistleblower,
before I
right?
speak.
where's,
It's under handling of reported violations, I'm not sure I understand what
I
it's right.
think he's talking about,
He's further along?
yeah, here.
Oh, I'm here.
Are we now in the whistleblower?
Yeah, let's start at the beginning of the whistleblower policy before jumping ahead.
I
Did you have anything? I have something in reporting violations.
Me too, I don't like the you and the you and
Exactly.
the you, right?
Exactly,
It's
that's what I was gonna point out.
like Talking
It
to.
all seems to be written as an
It's
employee
you are
manual
not
rather than
comfortable, we're not,
a policy.
yeah, yeah, right, it doesn't seem like it's appropriate to be written in a policy. You see what I'm saying?
So you could change that, I mean,
Oh, yeah, it's
if the
easy.
employee is not comfortable speaking to their supervisor
Sure.
Right, so that's all
Yeah.
I'm saying.
or not
Because
satisfied
it does
with
say an
the
employee,
supervisors,
so it should be.
you can just take the
employee.
pronouns.
Yep, I
If
see.
the employee did not.
Yeah, you're right.
Okay.
Accounting and auditing matters. I think we should have that put on the door, the accountant and auditors.
You got that in
Account-
both sentences?
Accounting matters, make her feel good.
Yeah, I'm gonna revise that whole paragraph and make sure, because there's a few different, like,
Yeah,
like you are not
You,
satisfied
you.
with your supervisor.
yeah.
Yeah.
Under, well, somewhere in here, there's one reference that provides the notion that this report of a violation or whatever is in writing. But in the rest of it, it's, you can report something, it could be oral. And I think the sooner things get reduced to writing, it's the better. Because if you call the ombudsman, or they give several people you can talk to,
And nobody does
and
anything.
at some point, that person has to put it in writing, and, you know, I would say, hey, come on and help me, we gotta agree that words, I mean, words are very important on something like this, what's your religion? So, in the preceding paragraph is the notion that the initial report is in writing, but all previous references to report, leave it open, could be oral or written. At
Well, you
some
notify the
point,
sender,
follow up.
acknowledge receipt.
The
That
alleged
has-
violation has to be committed to the writing, and I think the sooner the better. I mean,
Are we on
I'm
the same one? All of those were prompted.
down handling,
Well, when you talk, the first sentence, the town account will notify the sender and acknowledge receipt. Usually that is written form. don't
that's, I said, that is kind of the first place where I got the notion that it's written.
That is
But
written.
everywhere before that,
Oh.
it says if you have an issue, report it to this, the report will be
Ah.
investigated, you know.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
You know, even if it just says preferably in writing, or promptly followed up in writing, or something. I mean, if you have
Yeah,
one of
because it
these
shall address all reported concerns or complaints.
reporting violations, open door policy suggests simply share their questions, concerns, suggestions, complaints, someone who can address them
Yeah, because on the
properly.
finance part, it just says, the town account is responsible for investigating and resolving all reported complaints.
Yeah.
And you wanted all complaints to be written?
Well, I mean, you're speaking with your supervisor if you're not
Well,
satisfied. I
we
mean, maybe an
didn't write
initial
that.
thing is speaking, but if it starts taking on seriousness, it has to get reduced. to-
So it should go under reporting violations if you need to,
My instinct on this, I think it's a fair point, but my instinct is to raise the question with Dawn and basically say, I actually think town council should be the one to decide when things get written, because I think there are arguments on both sides.
Yeah, they
about-
say, well, we don't want a record.
It
But,
really depends at what point in the process do you want a record.
but if, okay.
So I don't know that we want to necessarily, but I think it's good to flag that. It's like, it's not clear when we would want something reduced to writing, or preferably in writing.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
I mean, I know if somebody were to call me, if I'm a manager and somebody calls me and says, here's my, I'm whistleblowing or something,
Well, the
I
other,
wouldn't want to just pass that on orally, because now I'm inserting my emphasis and, you know, things like that. I want
well, this one for
In the
to sit down with
reporting,
that person and we
but if they're reporting
Agree
a
on the record.
violation, the sentence here says, for suspected fraud, or when you or the employee are not satisfied or uncomfortable with following the town's open door policy, individuals should contact the town's independent audit firm directly.
so that's a financial
So they're saying,
inquiry.
if I have a problem and I don't want to go talk to my supervisor, if I know of some fraudulent activity, I go right to the independent audit firm?
absolutely. And I'll bet you if they get any volume of these, I bet they say, we were gonna talk on a recorded line. I'm in.
Oh, wait,
It's
I-
serious
That's how
stuff.
we're reported to? I mean, that's what it's telling me.
Fraud risk, there is a section on documentation,
Mhm.
okay? On whistleblower, there's no section on documentation. So is it different?
The fraud risk policy is different from the whistleblower policy, is that what you're asking?
Well, all I'm saying is the fraud risk policy
Yep,
mentions documentation,
correct.
okay? And then the whistleblower has nothing around documentation, which may be just fine, but I just wondered if there any difference. Because on the fraud risk, at the conclusion of the investigation, the results be reported to the members of the Board of Selectmen and other determined necessary.
Let's let Don Lowe and council
Right.
noodle it around. And the
So
point is,
there's
it starts out
there's written
oral, but
documentation. And then
as-
on the other one, it's,
Eventually,
things go farther and get more serious, somewhere it needs to be reduced to writing, and that notion needs to be in there, that's all.
all right. If he says
I would think once it got to the audit firm,
Yeah.
go into writing.
Sooner is better.
Well, it seems like the town accountant is the one that's going to be, taking care of a resolution here. Shall immediately notify the independent auditor of the town reporting any such complaint or work with them until the matter is closed. Oh, no, with the town, who auditor. Okay, so,
And if we knew the owner, that would be the person that
mhm.
has final say on this.
A town accountant.
Are we good with this?
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe. The horse is dead.
And then these last few on investments, these are in here because they've already been
done.
done.
So we don't have to mess
we're
with them
not
unless it's
messing
something.
with them. And in fact, I know that these are actually, by and large, these investment policies are policies that were drawn up by the Massachusetts Treasurer Collectors Association. So a lot of the language, like if you were to go to any random town and look up their investment policy, it's
It'd be the-
basically this.
Okay, so that's it.
Yeah, that's it.
Except for stabilization fund.
We don't have to resolve that
Okay.
today.
Yeah, but so, does everyone feel like we should put that one on the agenda for our next meeting to revisit?
I would.
Yeah. Because what I can do is, I'll implement changes, and I'll send a red line that shows the changes that we've agreed on, and then we'll really focus on the reserves policy next
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. That would be good.
If in the course of your discussions with the treasurer, see what the FDIC insurance is, because is this last one that's already done, I think it might be 250 and not 100. And, this it can be revised.
Yeah. Where,
I saw it in one of these, I'm not sure this was it or not. Safety and liquidity. Beyond.
250, page 39,
What page?
page 39, it's the fourth bullet.
Uh,
And would it make
3
sense
pages back from the end, 4 pages.
to get some greater clarity on the stabilization versus the reserve with Dawn or someone? How does it actually work as opposed to how we'd like it to work and what the amount should be?
You mean as a practical matter, how
Yeah.
often it's been?
Yeah, I mean, what's the history and how has it historically been handled?
Yeah, I asked that last year in the budget process, and we did.
Well, maybe
Nobody can remember, not even.
it's time to ask it again,
Yeah,
because there may
we
be
need-
rhymes and
I would
reasons the
love
way
to
it's
know.
done this way, and what kinds of expenses come out of it when.
I don't know what I did with my pen.
Maybe you asked for it, Brian.
Actually, I'll just put the note right in the policy. Ted, we can talk later about that FDIC thing.
Okay, I mean, I could look it up, I guess. I mean, it's not our, not our SOP, so I don't.
So I think maybe we want to, whenever the financial reserves policy comes back up, we'd want probably Dawn and/or Nanachka to come to the meeting if they can.
Yeah, to understand how it actually works and what's been the protocol and the experience, because we don't want to hog-tie the town. I mean, there'd be valid reasons why it fluctuates, I don't know.
Well, you're thinking of the fluctuation as free
From year to
cash.
year, free cash and the reserve, I mean, how do they work? How are they used? You know, you want to have flexibility in your finance to a certain degree. And we haven't sort of figured out why does it
They
change so
haven't
much.
hardly ever been used, is the problem. The stabilization fund, we use free cash every year, but
Yeah.
stabilization fund has.
Well,
rarely been-
and that would be an interesting conversation, because the stabilization fund, does that stay consistent year to year, or is that the one that went up and down?
No, that's so consistent. It goes up, but it doesn't go down.
It's invested at some modest,
It's
low
almost like
risk.
an emergency fund.
So
that
that's the
stays
one that's a
same,
percentage?
And then if you take out, you have to replenish it
Okay.
back, so it pretty much stays the same. Yeah, Free cash has been fluctuating, not much, from $1 million, right?
The past couple of years, it's been better.
Well, one year it was 790 and the other was 1.1, right?
And then last year it was 776. So,
Which is good.
Yeah, that's a good, that's healthy.
we don't have minutes to approve,
Okay.
so we have reached the end of our agenda.
Okay. Okay, I should move that we adjourn.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Hi.
It took me a
All
minute
right.
to figure out what you were asking.
Craig, did you have?
Thank you, good
seconded?
night.